Are you up for a super fun podcast? This 1 hour long conversation with architect Huzefa Rangwala from MuseLAB will inspire every designer out there. The conversation began with his love story with MuseLAB and ended with lots of laughs and advice for young aspirants. For me, this podcast was memorable because we invented a new word. Let me know if you find it out. Hello, sir. Welcome to Art Saga Dialogue, and thank you for taking out time for this interview.
Thank you for having me over.
Yeah, and also the journey of MuseLAB is very inspiring for us, and we would like to know more about it today in this interview. So, starting with our first segment in this interview, which is PSD, Philosophy, Story, and Design. So, the first question to you is, how did the idea of MuseLAB started, and how would you define your design philosophy?
Okay, so it's going to be a very long, boring story. So Jasem and I, we kind of met in the US. We were both studying. We were doing a master's over there, and after that, so I was in Atlanta. He was in Savannah. It was like one of those love stories, so to speak, right? So he was studying in Savannah, and one of those weekends I went over there for basically like a long weekend with a couple of my friends. That's where I got to meet him, and we made a whole bunch of new friends. But I think what was interesting was that we connected not just over stupid humor and food, but we also connected over design. I think we both kind of resonated with each other's, I would say, vibe for good design. And at every point while we were in the US also, we were having conversations about what we could do, or like eventually I think there was this one very cool backpacking trip that we did to Mexico, and that's when we said कि यार अगर design में कुछ करना है तो साथ में करेंगे, and we'll start something on our own together. So I came back, I worked with Hafiz Contractor for 3 years. I was an associate with him. Jasem came back in around 2010, and he worked with Pinakin Patel for a year. And then around 2011 December is when we said that, okay, I think, it's time to now finally start something on our own. So that's when, we said, okay, let's start our own office. Let's start our own studio. So we left everything that we had, sort of created over so many years, or basically in terms of the experience, etc. And then we're like, okay, this is, now going to be something that is going to be unique to only the two of us. And everything that we've learned from our past practices has to sort of, in some way germinate over here. So when we started MuseLAB, both Jasem and I, we are first generation architects. So no one in our family is from the design or construction industry. So you not only have to be good at design, but you also have to be a good businessman. Because at the end of the day, that's what a successful practice is about. It's not just being a successful designer. You need to understand business. Luckily, our families are business families. So maybe thoda bahut wo gene aa gaya tha. But I think to start off with, we were working from Jasem's dad's conference room. So that was like our office. He was very kind enough to lend us that space. So pehle almost like for a year or something like that, we were just working out from that office. And I think when we started out, we were like, okay, what do we name our practice? That was like the big question mark. Because at the end of the day, the practice has to sound cool, but it also has to speak of, who we are as people. So we ideated, we were like, okay, what do we do? And then we kind of, came up with MuseLAB, and there was a story to it. So Muse by itself, if you use it as, a verb, it means to muse or to think, right? So it always means to ideate, to think, or whatever it is. But also when you talk about muse as, sort of an adjective, it is an inspiration, right? Like, I mean, everyone has a muse, so for us, our clients are our muse. They are our inspiration. The project brief is our muse. That's what our inspiration is. So we kind of took to muse very, very like immediately, but then, okay, what goes with it? So we didn't want to get into the whole studio atelier kind of a space. So like, okay, what else, So then we thought, okay, let's call it kitchen, Muse Kitchen, because kitchen is where you sort of cook, you make mistakes, you kind of, it's fun at the end, you prepare food, which is like good. But then like, okay, maybe, kitchen might be a little bit too this for the Indian, They're like, okay, okay, let's look at lab, because a lab is also where you research, you develop, you ideate, there are fireworks, there's so much of things to explore and experiment with. And then finally you come up with something that you work for years and years. So you're like, boom, that's it, it's Muse and Lab, MuseLAB. And that's how MuseLAB sort of started as an idea. But also, I think what was very important is that even though both of us are architects, as far as our education is concerned, we were never married to, like just architecture. We were very clear that this has to be a design studio, that we are designers at the end of the day, we are problem solvers. So our entire philosophy has over a period of 10 years also evolved. We don't, like, if you see our projects also, that there will be like a MuseLAB aesthetic, but we probably tried everything. We have tried everything from maximalism to minimalism to Art Deco to Art Nouveau to like maybe like Portuguese vernacular to go on Portuguese. So I mean, the idea is that when you have a unique client and when you have a unique design aesthetic, as a designer, it allows you to respond to the brief, but also to the design in a very different way. So you're not stagnating, and that's how then the portfolio becomes very varied. So there is obviously a positive and a negative to that, because then, it took us a while to build a portfolio with a variety of works, because then a client would come and say, Are, like you have not done something like that. Would you be able to still do something like this for us? Right? We see so much color in your house and, in the homes that you've done. But would you be able to do something which is very, very clean and simple and minimalism? But now over 10 years, we're like, okay, this is it. We've done everything. So you can achieve. And it's not just about interiors or architecture. It's also about, us having started, MuseMart, which was in 2015. So MuseLAB started in 2012. And then we started MuseMart, which was like our product design line. And that's where we've designed like coasters and hangers for kids. We've designed wall art. We've designed like hooks, which basically resemble architectural buildings. We've designed like wall lights. So the light that's behind me, yes, the book light by us. We've designed a furniture collection. We've designed rugs, wash basins. But we're also doing a 70-acre master plan. We are doing like a resort, master plan. So I think it's really important. It was very important for both Jasem and myself that when we start our practice, and also to ensure that we stay sane and creative throughout the time, we should not say no to design, So which is why we also like designed a public toilet prototype. Like during the pandemic, we designed a hand cart, which won us a global design competition. We designed a prototype for an algal microforest, which is a very interesting project. Installations. So yeah, I think if I would say in just a couple of words, as designers, we do have principles. We do abide by principles. We do have a very set process in terms of how we work. But when it comes to a philosophy, I don't think, we are married to a certain philosophy or a certain style, and that's something that, we never wanted to sort of, be a part of or sort of have that within our practice. Luckily, we've still been able to, manage our projects in such a way that people do recognize that as a MuseLAB project. So I think in some way it's like a pat on the back for us. Kind of achieved something.
So yes, I always liked the name MuseLAB, and now I know the story behind this. So like this is a great insight for me also. And also you mentioned about food. So I think food brings people together. So that's a very
Absolutely.
nice. And
Yeah.
Coming back to my second question, what has been your inspiration for architecture?
So very honestly, so Jasem, if I have to talk about him, he was always creatively inclined, and he was very clear right from his schooling days, at least from what I know, that he wanted to get into design or architecture. So he was very focused in that sense. For me, I wanted to be a chemical, and architecture happened by chance. So both my parents are very creatively inclined. My dad's a photographer, my mom's a designer. So maybe some of that trickled into me. And just after my 12th, like I got admission in computer science, but it was in a school very far from where I was. I was like, no, I don't want to travel so much. And then one of my mom's friends' daughter was studying architecture, and she was like, okay, there is a test that you'll have to give, etc., etc. And I'm like, okay, I gave my entrance exam, and I'm like, okay, this is fun. There's drawing, blah blah blah, and maybe I have to design a couple of things, and that's how I ended up getting into architecture. So it was like absolutely by fluke, and something that no one should look up to, because I was the most confused and messed up person.
So that was the same story for me as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. I mean, for me also. So my entrance exam was in 1997. Okay, that's when I finished my 12th and I gave my entrance exam for architecture. At that time, also what happened was that most of the other colleges, the degree colleges, were all sort of, all the entrance exams were over. And the only college that had its entrance exam was Rachna Sansad, Academy of Architecture. So I only had that one option. I was like, either do this or then, you go travel like an hour to your computer science college. I was like, okay, let's just do this. Let's nail it. Luckily, I had a good score in my PCM, and I think I was able to just crack that, and then I got into it. So yeah, and I think the same thing. I think for me, once I put my head into something, I'm sort of very, very focused. And I think that's how I kind of, went through the 5 years.
So moving on, your architectural experience as a student and as a practicing architect.
So basically, if I have to talk about my years as a student, I think I definitely, the one thing that I learned a lot. I loved my faculty. I mean, they were really great. At the Academy of Architecture, especially my faculties in the second year and actually in the first year as well. Sameer Padora taught me, he was a graduate from our college. He taught me. So I was very, very, very happy that, he was one of my first mentors. And even in the second year, we had brilliant teachers, Mr. Venkatesh Rao, Sapna Dhanawala. They were like really, really good teachers. And I think that they really helped hone a certain, I would say, approach to design. See, at the end, it's your own doing, right? I mean, design is such an innate thing. You can't like have someone teach you design. You can help someone guide you in terms of these are the various processes. But that is something that has to come from within. I think no one can hold your hand and tell you, okay, do this or do that. So I think that mentorship was great. And then, of course, as you went to the third, fourth, fifth year, of course, it got into more technical side of design. But I think the biggest mistake that I made at that point in time was that I did not step out into the real world. I didn't go to a site and work with a carpenter, or I didn't try to like paint a wall and say that acha paint aise hota hai. I didn't like go for internships. So I was very academically driven. But my biggest mistake, and this is what I tell every student or every young architect, that, please get practical experience, because that really sort of, I feel like that was my biggest mistake. And I think I didn't have, at that point in time, there weren't many people who would guide you, or sort of tell you that, okay, this is what you also need to do, and maybe that's sort of an education, or that sort of a guidance that also needs to come from colleges now is happening. A lot of colleges are now inculcating internships, etc. And I think that's really, really good. But start like from the first year itself. I feel like, if you are really, really focused about being a good designer, a good architect, get that practical experience. So that was undergrad, and then I worked for 2 years. After I graduated, I went for masters. And I think that masters from 2004 to 2005, I was just in a 1-year post-professional master's course at Georgia Tech. That changed my perception about education completely. I loved it. I enjoyed it. It was the most intense 1 year of my life, where I probably would like sleep like maybe 3 or 4 hours every day, just because there was so much energy, and there was so much of good stuff to do. And at that point in time, like my master's program, also the program that I did was in the design of digital manufacturing. So back in 2004, or maybe earlier, during the times of people like Greg Lynn and all these guys who were doing a lot of digital design. But then Zaha came in, and then, like all these other sort of guys came to digital manufacturing, where everything that was computer generated was actually now being computer manufactured. So there was a lot of CAD being converted into CAM, right? And I think for me, that was like a huge shift mentally also, that, this is what you can do. Like, I mean, at that point in time, 3D printing was a big deal, right? I mean, to use CNC milling machines was a big deal. To go through post forming and to learn all those techniques was a big deal. So it was a big shift. And not just in terms of the tools that were available to us for doing good design, but also in terms of the approach to education. Like when I went there, obviously our faculty over there never ever pointed out bad things in our design. So even if there were 10 things that we had to talk about and 8 of those 10 things were bad, they only focused on the 2 good things and they built on that. And that was such an amazing high, because that never happened in India. In India, it was always like, why have you done this? Why have you done it? Blah, 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 blah. It was always like, I mean, that you were like, oh my God, what have I done? You have like committed a crime or something, right? And it would go to that point, because I mean, that's how education is here, right? It's very different. But there, they would build on those 2 things, and those 2 things actually, by the end of the semester, would manifest into something so interesting, and you yourself would be amazed that, okay, this is what I started with, and this is how design evolves. So I think that was really, I would say, uplifting, and that was really exciting, to be a part of design or education, and that also changed me. So I mean, of course, when I came back, I did sort of teach for a year, but then I realized that, my God, teaching is such a big responsibility. Like it has to be a full-time thing. You can't like work, And I was working under Hafiz contract at that time. I was doing a job, So I was like, I don't think I can balance. It's a very big thing, You have to be there mentally for the entire week, and you're responsible for those 8 or 12 students. So then I quit teaching actually. But yeah, that's my sort of thing with education. And I would also just very quickly brief about what inspires us in architecture, and that's something I did not answer. I think for both Jasem and me, and I think for MuseLAB as a practice, we take a lot of inspiration from everything around us, as cliched as it may sound. I mean, it could be everyday objects, it could be like, like I said, the site, materials, our clients, how excited our clients are to build their home. That itself inspires us, to do something good and to create something exciting design. So that's what we sort of take our inspiration from. We take a lot of inspiration from the people who work with us. So I think both Jasem and I, we love learning, and we've learned so much from everyone who's worked at MuseLAB. I mean, they bring so much to the table. So they inspire us. Our peers, I mean, everyone who we know socially through Instagram, or everyone that we've met, and I think that's really good about the architecture community nowadays, that no one is fighting with each other, or no one is, insecure. I mean, I think everyone is very secure about what they're doing. So we are like an open book, to everyone. So when we talk to people, when we talk to our peers or friends, I mean, they inspire us on what they're achieving, their practices, as people. But I guess, in terms of architects themselves, I mean, one of my biggest inspirations back in college was Zaha. You will see a lot of influence of her work in my portfolio. Some things that I feel like I've just lifted and put, that kind of stuff also. But I mean, that was what great. That was great.
Inspiration is, yes.
Yeah, I mean, so you sometimes would just lift, and I've done copied things. And I'm ashamed about it, but I'm talking to you about it also. So we've done that, and but she was. I think what was amazing about her was that she was a woman, and there's always this myth about a woman in architecture, but at the end she was also an architect. She went through 5 years just like a man, but when she came and she broke those myths, and she just sort of paved the way for so many other women in architecture, and I think that she was one of those people who actually made architecture a gender neutral profession. That okay, both men and women are the same level. You can't say that this is a lady architect. I mean, she's an architect. It's just that she's a she. So I love her. I loved her audacity. I loved her stubbornness. I loved, of course, design was one thing, but just as a person, and she really inspired me. And then once, when I went to the US, I mean, of course, the works of Coop Himmelblau, the works of, I would say Stephen Hall. Corbusier was always like my big guy, my go-to guy, and these days also, I mean, as far as our peers are concerned, like I love Samir Padora's work. I love the work of Siri. There are many designers these days, I mean, that I really look up to, like some of the young practices also, Studio UFO, Act of Quad. I mean, young practices, but so much energy, so much to learn from them. So I think it's a very, very healthy time for design. I think today, if as an architect or as a designer, if I say that I only get inspired by one thing, I'm limiting myself. I am just becoming this person who is not open to ideas. If I say that I only should take inspiration from the gods of architecture, no, that's wrong. I mean, there are young people doing amazing work. I can take inspiration from a damn iPhone for all I care, but I feel like you should just be open to being inspired, and design will just unfold.
Yes, as designers, like every day we work on something new, which is also an inspiration, like to talk about. So moving on to a segment 2, which is knowing the process, and we will learn about your processes. So we will discuss, like, do you want to discuss about the project which is close to your heart?
So the project which is closest to our heart, and I would say, for both Jasem and me, is an installation that we created for Raw Collaborative, where we worked with the Channapatna artisans. And I say this because this project has nothing to do with architecture or interior design or furniture design. It's very, very unique because it actually allows one to understand what he or she can do as a designer. It's all about good design. It's all about how design can impact people around us, right? So what happened was that in the middle of the lockdown, we didn't have any work. We decided to collaborate with a lot of people, and Raw Collaborative came in. Now, we've been going to Raw Collaborative for the past 2 years. We love the energy, we love the vibe, we love what they're doing, and the brief this year was everything to do with the crafts, right? So we said, okay, this year we don't want to do a furniture collection. Let's instead create an installation. And the idea was to then collaborate with some artisans to create an installation. So what we did was that we kind of figured out, we did our research. There are artisans across the country, but because of the lockdown, we had to figure out a way to communicate with them also, because we couldn't go down to Bangalore or to Channapatna itself. And that's when we said that, okay, they were the most accessible and they also were the hardest hit. So let's work with them. So the whole installation started with the idea of, where it's going to be. So if you look at Raw Collaborative and the venue, until last year, it was at the Mill Owners Association. And the brief was to create an installation anywhere in the Mill Owners Association, but we could not sort of, nail or, take any or drill in the building itself. I mean, any supports for the installation had to be mounted on it. So what happened was that we then sort of figured out that, okay, what is the best place? Now, if you're aware of it, Mill Owners Association, the approach has a ramp, but to the right of the ramp, there is a staircase that connects the 3 floors from the lower level to the 2nd floor. And the staircase is actually a central support, which kind of, the waist slab is kind of connected to that. So the waist slab cantilevers, and a very beautiful void that is formed between the handrail of the first, sort of celebrate the void of the staircase. Let's celebrate the void of Corbusier's staircase and let's fill it with these beautiful, colorful toys, because obviously we had to make an installation that Corbusier should also be proud of, that sort of it has to be contextual, So obviously, when we started the process, there was a lot of back and forth because the idea was to create 9 modular toys. So these toys that we've created are actually shape-shifting toys. You can sort of assemble them, reassemble them, or redesign them. They can sort of interchange also. And very importantly, they were supposed to be gender-neutral toys. We wanted to communicate, we wanted to sort of express those ideas also, because there is a lot of crap going on in the country right now. I don't want to get into that, but we wanted to make sure that they're gender neutral toys, that they are toys which are not defined by color or by race or by sex, by caste, nothing of that. So they have to be toys that one can explore. They have to be inclusive. That was very, very important. So when we designed this tribe, you would see that, okay, the top is almost feeling like it's a man, but the bottom is like more like a woman. I mean, it's like that. So there was a lot of thought given to the shape of the toys, the modularity of the toys, but at the same time we have to understand the limitations of the artisans, because they also using certain tools, right? And we have to understand that also. So that process, 2-3 months. Installation, was like very important, like I said, because we have to figure out how these are being installed without affecting the building itself. And I think that whole process of working with the artisans, uplifting them, and then making a very, very successful, beautiful contextual installation that pays homage to the staircase of the Mill Owners Association, was a very, very important thing. And basically we checked both those boxes, and we're like, wow, that's awesome. That's great. When you go there and you kind of walk through the staircase, and you got this really amazing light coming in, and those beautiful shadows of the toys being cast on the floor. There's a slight sway of that curtain because the air, passing through. It was just a very, very surreal feeling that this is what we were building on the computer screen, and now it's kind of translated to this really sexy installation. So we were on a high, and then we're like, but the most important thing for us was that when we designed this installation, we've done installations in the past, we also realized that, once the installation is done, everyone applauds you, everyone does everything, then these installations go to a landfill. We are like adding to the garbage that is already there, right? So we were very, very clear that when we are doing this installation, the idea is that after it gets disassembled, this installation will continue to have an afterlife. So what we did was that all those toys, we worked with Teach for India, and we donated those toys to underprivileged children in Ahmedabad. And I think I get goosebumps when I talk about it. It's like, it's because it's so good, right? Like finally, after like being an architect or being a designer for like 18 years, I feel like I finally did something good, right? And I think, and when I say I speak on behalf of Jasem and myself and MuseLAB, that, okay, finally we did something, where it was not just shosha, it's not just like, like big budget projects and brands and this and that. It actually was like a toy that was held by a child who is actually, like appreciating it, right? And that was the most amazing and most satisfying project that we have ever worked on. I mean, everything else is there on our Instagram and on our website. You can look at it. I don't even want to talk about it because, I mean, yes, there is process. Every project is very close to our heart. But I think that this project is where we realize that we finally did something good, and I cannot thank Raw Collaborative, it's like an appreciation speech also right now, because it's very difficult to trust, right? Are you going to actually create something? So they trusted us with this, luckily, we delivered, had a great team of people working on this. And I think that's going to be like on top of our project list for the lifetime of MuseLAB.
I think
yeah, that's it. Yeah,
putting smile on someone's face is always special for us, and way you explained all about it, I can understand that how close this project is to your heart. So moving on, can you tell us what defines a good design?
I think a good design first has to be very, very practical. See, the thing is that, design is not about aesthetics. Design is not about how pretty it is, how beautiful it is. Design is all about practicality, because design is about problem solving. I mean, today, whether you are a fashion designer, whether you're a product designer, whether you're an industrial designer, whether you're designing cars, planes, or whether you are designing softwares, what are you trying to do? You're trying to solve problems. And if you're solving the problem, right, it means that it is a practical solution and that the design itself is practical. So I think good design has to be practical. Everything else is a layer that you're adding to it. Of course, when you talk about sustainability, right? When you talk about using the right materials, when you talk about, of course, making it fun and, I think adding to the vibe of the space, this is all there. But for me, I think the most important is has to be practical. And that's what defines good design. You can design the most beautiful chair, but I mean, if it is just not working for that person, it's not working, then that means that, you have to, it's not good design. So I feel for us, it's very important that it has to be practical. Of course, sometimes that, for lack of a better word, the creative kida takes over, and then, there's like a little bit that you do there, to satisfy your creative ego. But I think in general, it has to be like, yeah, I'm repeating myself. This is the sixth time I've said it, but it has to be practical.
I've also seen those perforated panels at MuseLAB's office. So can you tell us how you came up with that idea?
So when we moved from Jasem's dad's conference cabin, and we were like, okay, now it's time to have our own office, because we appointed 2 more people, and we were literally 4 of us sitting on that conference table looking at each other. We would clients over there, we would have our food over there, everything is happening over there. Like, okay, it's time to move into a new office. So when we moved into space, it was just 226 square feet. So a 14 by 14 space on the lower level, and then we had a loft. So we designed a space for around 8 people, and that's where we've been working for the past, I think for the past 7 years. I am right now sitting in our new office space, and this is the first interview that I'm conducting, in our new office space.
I'm so lucky.
But yeah, so the idea of the screen was very simple. Basically, we were on the ground floor, and we were the third sort of gala or unit. As soon as you entered our industrial estate, it was a really nice building, and everyone had to sort of stick to a T profile because that was the regulations. But you could have like a jali or a screen, which is your protective sort of thing. Then we sort of said it, okay, if we are creating identity, it has to be something fun. Now, the obvious thing was that we should have a big window, let light come in, like you wanted. But we also realized that because we were the third unit from the entrance, everyone would peek inside the office, and we were very clear that we didn't want that to happen. So I think for us, the screen became an identity for MuseLAB. So everyone then recognized us for that screen. And the screen also had 3 types of perforations. So one perforation was a see-through, the other was a hinge perforation, and the third was a pivoted perforation. And that is what created this really sort of a beautiful parametric skin, And I think sometimes what happens is that, you design something, of course, thinking about the outside, that this is how it's going to look, and thinking about the inside, that it's going to give you that sort of privacy. But then we realized that every time a car would move, right, and the reflection of the sun, and it would create this brilliant magic inside the office, which we never imagined. So sometimes design leads to such happy surprises, and we were happy that we had it in our own office, that we worked out within our office. And I think that was a very big high for us, because we were very scared that, okay, itna chota area, how will we work? But I think a very close friend of ours actually made us realize that, guys, how do you all create so many things and work on such large projects from only 226 square feet of real estate, And I think that's when we realized that, yeah, we've done something very good for ourselves. And then we were also like, oh, now we need to move into a bigger office. so that's how we are here now, in a much nicer space, a bigger space, lots of light, windows. We are on the second floor. But yeah, to talk about the screen, and I think it was very well appreciated critically. Also won a lot of awards. Was highly published, both nationally and internationally. So yeah, we're very happy with what we created over there.
So moving on to the last question in this segment, you mentioned about MuseMart. So, and you also mentioned about the lamp that is on the wall, which is, I think, made of rat and cane mesh. So can you tell about the more materials you're exploring in MuseMart?
Sure. So when we started MuseMart, see, the thing is that when you're designing a product, it takes forever. And the most important thing is not just understanding the ergonomics, because when things are at a smaller scale, it requires a lot more detail and a lot more research. I mean, we don't realize that, but designing a building sometimes becomes easier than designing just a coaster. We spend 1 year prototyping coasters. So, because when we started MuseMart, we were exploring birch ply as a material, and all our products were with birch ply. And I think the beauty about birch ply is that it is plywood. It's got a very clean sort of a surface, when once it's polished, but also the sides, the grains, I mean, the whole process of laminating the wood itself gives you this really beautiful edge. And I think that just became our go-to material, to create products for MuseMart back then. This I'm talking about in 2015 to 2017. And that's when we sort of designed, like I said earlier, coasters, hangers for kids. We designed a wine rack, a modular wine rack. We also designed, wall art for kids, so they were very interesting products. We designed around 9 products, tangrams. And what we realized was that, to design a product, understanding material, like I said earlier, is very important. Understanding the limitations of the material is very important. Understanding what you can do to the material, in terms of whether it can be molded, bent, post formed, milled, etc. So these were like certain things that we really enjoyed with birch ply. That was actually the first material that we tried. Then we tried with concrete. We tried with like metal. We did like 3D printing. Our furniture collection was actually an exploration of a lot of joinery details, but also a lot of color. And I think they were all 16 pieces were very unique statement pieces. And then this also, the light that you see behind us, we're calling it the reading light. So it's like when you read a book, but it's spelled as REEDING because it's a read. There's like a sort of a scene. So it's like a play on words. I think material exploration has always been one of our forte, because that allows us to play with colors, patterns, etc. I think that's where we are at with MuseMart.
I think I would like to see more like products of Rattan Cane, which personally I love Rattan Cane, and
Right.
it inspires me a lot. Like I go and see photographs everywhere, and I love Rattan Cane. I hope I will experience it someday.
Absolutely. And I think that these days, see, the thing is, like I said, we are a design studio, and like I said, we do everything in design. So that's why our product lines are also not like continuous. They do come with breaks, because obviously we also want to sort of focus on other things that we are doing. But if you love Rattan, I mean, you should definitely follow Vika's story. Mm-hmm. She's like our person, Priyanka Narula. She's an exceptionally intelligent designer, and her Vika products are fantastic. We are collaborating with her on a lot of projects, so you should explore that. Yeah.
Great. Definitely. I will. And moving on to our next and last segment, advice to the aspirants. So first question is, starting your own firm, how challenging was that? And some tips of running a firm successfully.
I don't know if we are successful yet. I mean, there are many more successful practices. I think we just have a little reach, and maybe Instagram shows that we are very successful, but no, we have a long way to go. I think we probably just like started climbing that first rung of the ladder of success, and maybe there are like 200 more rungs. I think it's very important to not let success get to you, because then you feel like you have arrived. And as an architect or as a designer, you already graduate with a very big fat ego. You think that your design is the best, and the minute वही होता है ना, मतलब कि भाई साहब मेरा design best है, no one can beat me. I am Zaha Hadid. I am Stephen Hall. So I think what's really important, you can't allow success to hit you. Never. Even if you've done the most amazing project, sorry, but you can do something better. I think that's what allows you to strive for success and to strive for being better than yourself, not others. I think never compare yourself to others. I think the other big problem right now is that there's a lot of we are really sort of relying on Instagram to compare ourselves with each other. that is the worst thing, you know. I mean, I might take the most amazing picture, but if you come to that place, you know, like it might be the most horrible finish, you know. So I feel like don't let Instagram also get to you, you know. Don't compare yourselves with others. Forget Instagram, that's just a platform. I love Instagram, I love that platform, but I feel like it's very, very important to not let yourself be affected by what someone else is doing. I think the minute you start doing what you love, and you keep doing that regularly, you will definitely sort of like be successful. Because when we started out also, very honestly, after having worked with such big practices, working on master planning projects and like high rise towers, and Jasem worked only on airports when he was in New York, and then you come and you start your own practice, and your first project is a 2-bedroom apartment, right? And wo bhi uska interiors karna, it's not even like you're doing architecture or whatever, right? And we're like, dude, like we were coming from these backgrounds and these projects, and now this is what we're doing. And that's the only thing we did in the first year of MuseLAB. We just built 1 2-bedroom project, you know and we never knew sort of how to market ourselves, or how to promote ourselves, or how to talk about ourselves. We were like very cocooned in that sense. And I think it was only after we got an email from Home Review at that time. The magazine does not exist anymore. I think they're more online. In 2015, we got an email that we would like to feature your work. And we were like, oh God, like, okay, someone has reached out to us. And then we were like, yeah, you know what? I think like, okay, if one person liked us, it means that we can now reach out to other people. So basically, when that magazine came to, we realized, okay, you know what? It's important to market yourselves also. Okay. When the first client did not pay us, we realized that, you know what, we need to have a very strong contract in place. We need to have a legal advisor. We need to have an accountant, that if we have to run a business, we need to have all these things in place. When we made the first mistake on site, we realized that, okay, our contractor's terms and conditions with us and with the client has to be very, very much in place. So I think success is obviously also defined by the mistakes that you make. And we made so many, and that's how we did not cry over our mistakes. We sort of took that in our stride. And again, this is very cliched. It's for every industry, not just for architecture design. I think if you make a mistake, figure out what happened, what went wrong, and then take help from someone who can actually help you resolve that. Rather than being the person that I know everything because I'm an architect. I'm sorry, I know jack shit. I don't know anything. I think it's very important to also accept that you are dumb. Like when I say you, I mean I am dumb. I don't know everything, and I need help from the right kind of people, the right set of people, to be able to make myself successful. So success is never a one person thing. It's a village. It takes a village to be successful. It takes an entire team to be successful. So if you're ever running a practice, the most important thing is to be kind and respectful to your team. Don't treat your team as employers. They are also architects. They've also gone through 5 years of design. They are human beings. They are not like like someone who you just can say that, okay, you do this, do that. I mean, they have an opinion that needs to be heard and respected, because at the end, they will also go and sort of inculcate the same principles when they start their own studios, right? Or when they do that. And that's great at the end of the day. So I think being successful is a lot of things. I think it's about being humble. It's about not comparing yourself to people. It's about not letting it hit you. It's about working with your team. It's about just being nice people, nice human beings. It's about being mentors more than bosses. I think there's a big difference over there, and we always believe in mentoring people and not having this whole boss employee kind of a culture. We work on first name basis. There is no sir, madam over here. I mean, because I feel like it just develops a certain comfort. Of course there are lines and there are rules, because that's the only way you can grow. But I think these are very, very important. And I think this is more from a business side of the entire thing. Like I said, having your documents, everything in place. And I think everyone who's listening to this, please go and watch Sarah Sham's Instagram and her videos. And I think that woman, I learned from her. So she is like my mentor also, and she's like an amazing friend. But I think after college, the first thing that you need to do is watch all of Sarah Sham's Instagram.
Yes, they are like very insightful IG teams.
you'll learn a lot. You'll learn everything. I mean, she's an open book and she helps everyone, in a very, very big way. So I think that's what, that is what is required. But if you were to talk about it from a design point of view, I think don't get harrowed by making a mistake, because there are many times when you look at your projects in the past, and I talk about ourselves also, you realize that I could have done this better, I could have done that better. But that's the thing, at the end you cannot keep designing. You have to build. You're no more in college. Just like you're a submission in college, even over here there's a client waiting to take the keys from you and start living in that space. So I think it's really important that when you are in a design studio, it takes time to figure out what your aesthetics are. It takes time to figure out what is that language that defines MuseLAB. It takes time to figure out what basically your sort of I would say your guiding principles are. So I think let it evolve. Like, don't be like, okay, I have started my practice today, tomorrow itself I'll decide that I only want to do this and then I will not do anything else. No, that's not how it has to evolve. And I think you'll learn. So it's fun. Yeah, I mean, I think at the end, if you are excited every day, and if you are like enthusiastic every day, there will be lows and highs. I'm not always as cheerful and bubbly like how I'm right now. There are certain moments that stress me out, but I think I love to impart my experiences. I love to talk about it, and I love to sort of and it's really fun, because I know that when a couple of our babies sort of flew out and started their own practices, and now they're doing so well, it feels very good, and they're kind of also endorsing the same principles and the same practices that we had over here, in terms of running a studio, whatever it is. I mean, they have their own aesthetic, their own language, but that's great to see that happen. And also I feel when you are in a partnership, like for me and Jasem both, I think the most important thing is to respect each other's opinion, to sort of understand what are the strengths of each other's, because it's very easy for ego to come in between. And I mean, the first time when we decided to work together also, our parents were like, oh my God, you guys are best friends. It's the worst thing to do. How can you start working with your best friend? This happens and that happens. And, we've seen friendships fall apart, and then the business falls apart. But touch wood, I mean, we have been together for like 10 years and we're only growing. Of course, we have our sort of, I would say, I won't call them arguments. I would say we have our opinions, which maybe we don't immediately agree to. But then we sleep over it. We come back the next day, we understand why Jasem said this or why Huzefa said this. At the end, it is in the collective interest of MuseLAB, yes. Right? That's really important for a practice, for a partnership practice, to sort of realize that every decision that is made is only in the larger interest of this entity. So yeah, so that way, I mean, we've been very successful. I mean, we are, like this is our 10th year. We just finished 10 years as MuseLAB, in January. So just very excited for the next decade now.
So you mentioned about Instagram, and we are in the Instagram age right now. And I think we should use that medium for inspiration rather than being like, इसने बहुत अच्छा काम किया, मुझे कुछ नहीं आता है. So I think we like get inspired from it and work towards it. So absolutely. Speaking of inspiration, young architects are always looking for inspiration and motivation. So how you keep yourself motivated every day?
For me, when I step into the office, I know that I need to be motivated because there are 16 people in the office, that look up to us in some way, whether it's for solutions, whether it's for advice in terms of design or whatever it is, right? So I think that the fact that I need to motivate someone also keeps me motivated. That's really important. And also, of course, there's this whole sort of thing that we do have, like projects that we need to deliver, there are like timelines that we need to meet, and I think that in some way, that is like that. It's like a clock, right? It sort of constantly, in some way or the other, is ticking. And I think that when that is also, that's like a dagger on your head, right? I mean, that you need to sort of deliver. So when you have to deliver something, automatically you need to know that there is nothing that is more sort of self-motivating than these sort of deadlines or submissions or projects that you're already working on. So I think I think I seek motivation, I seek motivation for myself in some way. In terms of inspiration, I think the first thing is obviously I think Jasem and I. So okay, sorry. So I'll go back to motivation. Jasem and I also, we motivate each other a lot, right? Because we literally sit next to each other. I think the good thing about having a partner is that when one person is feeling a little low, the other person is there to kind of balance it out. And I still, I don't know how people who handle offices themselves, who are like proprietors, they manage it. Because I personally feel like I would not have survived this industry had it not been for Jasem, or had it not been for us working together. And I think he also seconds that. It works. It's for both of us. So yeah, we definitely get motivated by each other also. Now, when it comes to inspiration, I think for me the most important thing is that I seek inspiration. Like so. So for example, I do go to Instagram for inspiration. I'll be very honest, and I think. I read this really, really interesting thing, that what is the difference between being inspired and being copying something? Today, if I'm designing a chair, a chair has been like for hundreds and hundreds of years, but if I design a chair, it's not like I'm copying a chair. I'm getting inspired from the ergonomics of, what a chair is like and what a chair is supposed to function. And then I'm making it my own, using my own details. So that is also in some way inspiration. But I feel like in some way, blatantly copying something is like a big no-no. But taking inspiration, is like amazing, because I think today, like Rafa Nadal inspires me for who he is as a person. Okay, I enjoy tennis. I love tennis. I take inspiration from him, but that does not mean that I design tennis courts or I'm designing tennis rackets. I think it's more about, so when you take inspiration from Instagram also, I love going through posts on Upworthy because they're so uplifting, they're so positive. So I think that, these, when the idea, what I said earlier also is that it's important to seek inspiration from people around you. It's important to seek inspiration from, let's say, your everyday objects, from your peers. I think, and that's what sort of keeps you going. So, to sum it up, yeah, I guess that's how it is. Also, when we are doing our product lines, our furniture lines, or even our projects, I think very, very clear that there is a certain process that we start off with. Like I'll be very honest, we're working on a project right now where I have taken inspiration from Shroff Leon, Kazad and Maria Shroff. They're very good friends, and I keep looking at this one project of theirs that goes by the name Mirador, and I am like, my God, guys, you guys have made such an amazing project. It's like a home, such clean lines, and I'm like, okay, I'm really inspired by this, and I am doing something which is not that, obviously. I'll get killed by them first and then by everyone else. But it's so be able to create something which is so pure and pristine, but yet making such a strong statement. And that was my inspiration, that how can I create something so pure and pristine, but that can also make a strong statement. So, it's okay to take inspiration from your friends, your peers, from designers around the world, but just don't copy. Be inspired by it, and then take it to the next level.